Hello and welcome to another episode of Graham Hughes' PUBCAST, and we're in old Tom's Gym Bar in Durham today. We've moved around the north a lot in the last couple of weeks, haven't we?
We have, and we do appreciate the invites to go to Scotland and Warrington, I think we've been invited to.
I really want to go to Scotland, and people in the comments have commented on the fact that I haven't been to Scotland yet, even though I've promised on many occasions that I will be going to Scotland, but it's fallen through for whatever reason.
Well, we've all got sort of busy lives. You're not the only person who plugs things. I'm going to plug something. I've been invited to say a few words at the New Forest for EU Festival, which is on the 14th of September. It's a Saturday, starts at 1 and finishes at 4 in the afternoon. So we've both been invited, but Graham is up in the air because he's doing all this other stuff. He might be a little bit busy.
It's one of those things that you say that Manchester Furore got in touch and said, "Oh, can you help out with this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure," thinking it would just be like sending out a few tweets or whatever,
yeah.
But I've essentially ended up doing a lot of
running the whole thing. So Graham may not be able to make it, but yeah. I certainly will be. So thank you, Gordon, for the invitation.
Gordon.
I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to talk about other than what I've already told you about the positive reasons why the EU membership was so important to a lot of us, you know. So yeah. I'm going to be very positive about things and not just bagging Brexit.
We're trying our very best not to mention the B word.
The B
word, because that's all doom and gloom. However, I'm going to take my hat off because, Adam, the title of this podcast is going to be What the...
what the actual...
There's quite a few people around us, so we don't want to swear too loudly in case we offend people and get interrupted. But basically, what is going on? This week we've had the President of the United States demand that he wants to buy Greenland off Denmark and then spitting his dummy out of the pram because they said no.
So one of the most evil men on the planet has said to Denmark, "I'm not going to visit Denmark anymore," yeah. And they're saying...
President Bolsonaro, Bolsonaro of Brazil, who famously is deforesting the Brazilian Amazon rainforest at a rate of 1 football field a second, is now saying that the fires that are raging in the Amazon, because the Amazon's on fire, plus the Arctic's on fire as well, the Arctic Circle and the Amazon are both on fire at the moment, but it's the result, it's his enemies that have set...
His enemies have
set now stuff on fire.
It's 20% of the world's oxygen supply comes from the Amazon rainforest. I think 20% of the world's oxygen supply is stolen by Nigel Farage and Anne Widdecombe, but apart from that... Oh, here's another weird thing that's happened this week. I'm on an alcohol-free beer today, which is absolutely lousy, because I've had to drive up to Durham. And the reason I had to drive up is because the train tickets are hugely expensive at short notice.
That's something else we need to talk about. And finally, we're going to have to... finally, there's 2 people in our lives who are currently doing everything in their power to make our lives a misery. One of them is called Boris, and the other is called Jeremy. And I wish they were both...
FOAD. I think there's a saying about this, isn't there? I don't.
What does FOAD stand for?
Fuck off and die.
Oh, right. I wasn't going to say that, but I will reiterate something that I said on the previous podcast, which is I would never wish death on anyone.
Yeah, but
there are some graves that I look forward to dancing.
Well, I think the actual saying is, and I don't know whether it's Oscar Wilde, but it could be an Oscar Wilde saying.
It's supposed to be Mark Twain, wasn't it?
Mark Twain said, "I wouldn't wish death on anyone, but I'll be celebrating at people's wakes." I think was the actual saying.
You would read people's obituaries
with a great deal of pleasure. Yeah. Okay. So,
whether he said it or not.
Well, we could have just made that all up anyway. So,
if you're ever watching University Challenge and the question is a witty quote, it's usually always Oscar Wilde.
Yeah.
Always. There was a marvellous anecdote that I heard once about Oscar Wilde. He was at a dinner party once and someone said something tremendously witty. And Oscar said, "Oh, I wish I said that. That was tremendously witty." And the lady next to him said, "Don't worry, Oscar, you will."
Yeah.
I love that. I'm more famous than you.
Yeah.
So we have got climate change. We've got the price of the trains. We have got Boris Johnson putting his feet up in front of the French president. He got
on a table,
being put on an errand to fetch some elbow grease by the German Chancellor. We'll do it in 30 days.
And do it in 30 days. I mean, here's a sobering thought. It's tomorrow will be 1 year since we first met. And I first started getting involved with these videos.
You drove me down to like Plymouth or somewhere. Portsmouth, Southampton. That's the
Southampton. We did 2 videos there.
Memorable place. Sorry, Southampton. Sorry.
And
it's all down south.
And I remember saying in the car, we sort of started getting along famously. And
good job we did, because it was a long journey, wasn't it?
It was a long journey.
Could you imagine?
5 hours.
You didn't know me, and you're like, "Oh, come and get in my car for 5 hours."
Yeah, I stayed up in Middlesbrough on the night of my birthday because I was working up there at the time, and I came up to Durham at something like 5 in the morning to collect you, and we drove all the way down, which was like a 5.5 hour drive to Southampton, and we shot a couple of videos, and we were looking at the port, and because Kieran, the van driver, what he says is and was and will always be still very valid, but he was sort of scratching on the surface because he's wasn't involved with the ports, and I get involved with ports in doing the inspections of cranes and stuff there, and oil refineries and stuff. And what they did is I said, well, look at the amount of containerized stuff that comes in and out of here, and we got some good footage there, and we had a few good points, didn't we? But in a year, we thought back then, I remember saying, it can't get much worse than this.
Oh my word. And now Boris Johnson is our Prime Minister, embarrassing us on the national stage in the same way he did when he was Foreign Secretary, the same way he did when he was Mayor of London.
Yep.
Being absolutely ruthlessly obnoxious to absolutely everybody that we need good relations with, because we're going to be absolutely desperate come the 1st of November, because we'll have no trade deals with anyone in the world. We'll have some continuity trade deals, which will hopefully kick in.
The one for South Korea was agreed yesterday, which was worth 12 billion, I think.
Yeah, it was worth a lot less than the
650 billion
that our trade with the EU is worth. And free trade with the EU, and that's what we're throwing away, along with our freedom of movement.
And all the other trade deals that we've got by virtue of being in the EU, because that 650 billion is just our trade with the EU, isn't it? So there we go. So Boris Johnson's losing the plot. I think Donald Trump has lost the plot. He now thinks he's the second coming of Jesus Christ.
And this is where we start thinking, is it time to run away to Graham's Island in the Caribbean? Because Donald Trump will get re-elected, I guarantee it. And if we have a general election, which is what dickhead Labour bloke, what's his name? Jeremy Corbyn wants. They're not going to win. They got 14.1% in the last national election, which was the European elections. They got 14.1%. And I know that the voting figures were down, but...
Yeah, but it's 14.1% of people who attended, so it's still a representation.
System.
Yeah. You gave me some interesting facts on the phone yesterday, some polling data.
Yeah, according to Survation, and there's polling companies that put together all the other polls, like that ones done by Survation and YouGov and things like that, because YouGov famously was set up by Conservatives, so I think was Survation actually. You got Mori Ipsos as well doing polls, but if an election was run today, based on the polls, the Tories would romp home with over 370 MPs, whereas Labour would collapse to about 150.
And why is that?
Based on polling data.
Yeah.
Because of Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you.
Because he's about as popular as syphilis.
Or cholera.
And yet his fans are like, oh no, it's amazing. Now you've got to understand that the country's not being run at the moment. I'm saying, oh, it's Boris and it's Jeremy, it's their fault. Actually, no. Dominic Cummings and Seamus Milne.
Yeah.
Unelected bureaucrats who are the grima worm tongues of this situation, dripping poison in the ears of the people in charge of the country and the Labour Party.
Yeah, yeah. And Dominic Cummings, I think I've quoted David Cameron, who I'm not a big fan of, as you can imagine, but David Cameron described him as a career psychopath. Now, what he has said...
This is the guy in charge of our country right now.
Yeah, because
Dominic Cummings.
Basically, he's the puppet master, I would say, with Boris Johnson.
Oh, God, he's running the campaign. The Conservatives have spent over £100 million on Facebook advertising and all the online social media and communications about No Deal.
And the thing is, as well, is that he's actually running it as a
political campaign.
Well, but also would quasi-dictatorship be a fair description, do you think? I don't know, because basically he said if there's a vote of no confidence and Boris Johnson loses, he's not going to step down. So it's completely, where's this democracy that we voted to take?
Yeah, but he could be forced to step down if the Queen decides to take on another interim prime minister.
Yeah, but the point is that
he doesn't have the final say on that.
Yeah, but Dominic Cummings is just this is how arrogant he is. He's just saying he won't go.
Well,
that's the problem now.
This is a systemic problem in British law and in British politics, is that we don't have a written constitution. A lot of it is based on convention, and a lot of the convention is people not being horrible.
Yeah.
People not, doing things
They do things the fair way.
Yeah, fair and equitable and British, like the rules of cricket. But the problem is, if you get in a bunch of cheats who are just looking at all the gaps in between this legislation going, what can we do with that gap? A good example is if you have an electoral campaign, you have a period called PURDA, which is when you aren't allowed to go on the media without giving the other side a say. You have a certain amount of money that you are restricted on spending on electoral communications, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We're not in Purdah at the moment because there isn't an election. There probably will be one, and that's why the Conservatives are spending all the money now, because they can and no one stops them. And I'm getting a lot of eyeballs looking at the data on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook. They've spent a lot of money, and they're targeting also younger voters through, I believe they're using Snapchat. I haven't seen that myself, but Snapchat and also Instagram.
Well, I only use Twitter and FaceTube, so I don't quite know.
But you've got to understand that Dominic Cummings.
Dominic Grieve's okay.
Dominic Cummings and Seamus Milne do not have our best interests at heart, or the best interests of the country at heart.
They only have one set of interests at heart.
They don't have a heart.
Well,
neither of them. But essentially, Seamus Milne will be happy, because should we go through the process that Labour wants? The series of impossible tasks. It's like Alice in Wonderland.
Okay.
Do you want to go through it?
Let's try.
Okay.
So,
first of all, what do they want?
A general election.
No, before that.
A vote of no confidence.
Yes, vote of no confidence. So, the only person who can bring a vote of no confidence against the government, as opposed to against a leader of their party, against the government, is the leader of the opposition, who is Jeremy Corbyn. He's the only person who can do that. Now, if he does that, there is a vote in Parliament. It's only 50-50. You get 51%, it's just a simple majority to say they don't have confidence in the leader. Mm-hmm. Then the government, under the Fixed Term Parliament Act of 2011, they have 2 weeks to find an interim leader. Who's that interim leader going to be?
Well, Jeremy Corbyn wants it to be him.
Yeah, so it is like Alice in Wonderland, doing impossible things before breakfast.
There are Conservatives who are willing to vote against their own government and bring it down, which is a career-ending decision to make for a politician, to bring your own government down, right? Or it should be. It isn't in the case of Kate Hoey, who keeps voting against the whip and doing whatever the hell she wants because she is Nigel Farage in drag. And she just does her own thing, and she's still got the Labour Party whip.
Yeah, but she hasn't voted Lib Dem, which would be the worst thing to do.
I know. How pathetic is that? Michael Heseltine he had the whip removed for voting Lib Dem, didn't he?
Yeah.
Anyway, but there are Conservatives who are willing to do that, but they're not willing to do it to put Jeremy Corbyn into number 10.
He doesn't have the numbers.
The Liberal Democrats won't do it to put Jeremy Corbyn into number 10.
He doesn't have the numbers.
It comes down to simple mathematics.
So, who does have the numbers? Ken Clarke,
Harriet Harman, possibly Dominic Grieve, Yvette Cooper.
Someone who can get a cross-party support,
respect.
Get over the 51% or 50.1% of the votes they need to set themselves up as a caretaker PM. And then what they need to do is say to the EU, we would like to extend Article 50 in time to get all our ducks in order, because at the moment it's a shambles. We're absolute chaos. We are not prepared for anything, despite how much money the government keeps throwing at us. So that's taxpayers' money, by the way. Yeah. Taxpayers' money, over 2 billion now has been spent on no-deal separation.
Spaffed up the wall, as Boris would say.
Yeah, it's not going to get the £1 trillion of assets that have already been stripped from the City of London by the big companies like Barclays, which moved 160 billion itself. Barclays
and all these agencies like the European Drugs Agency or Medicines Agency or whatever it was, they pulled up stumps from London and have gone to wherever.
Well,
and
of course, yeah.
They're gone. They'll never come back, even if we stopped this ridiculous Brexit idea.
You know, if you want to sell your medicine that you've made in the UK in the EU after the 1st of November, you have to have it tested, each batch tested on EU soil. So you think of the facilities that's going to require.
So that's why Big Pharma is already setting up plants in Ireland and wherever. So there's still some of the big pharma companies are still going to produce here, because they've already got the plants here. But they'll be scaling back on production because they'll be moving it to Dublin, won't they, or to the Republic of Ireland,
or the Netherlands,
AstraZeneca, or Denmark.
AstraZeneca, one pharmaceutical company, British pharmaceutical company. Actually, it's Anglo-Danish or Anglo-Swedish, but it's they've set up in Britain. They add an extra 1% to our entire export GDP.
Really?
Yeah, just one company.
One company.
And we're making life very, very difficult for them, because if they want to test a very complex, say, anti-cancer drug like Zoladex, which is made in Macclesfield, at the moment it can be tested in Macclesfield, no problemo. We leave without a deal on the 1st of November, any Zoladex that they make in Macclesfield, and that plant employs hundreds of people, but it also has the net effect of employing people in the surrounding areas, who the services and things like that cater for the staff.
Now that plant will still likely operate.
Yes.
So we're making sure we're not putting Project Fear out there, but some plants will close. But what they're likely to do is open another plant on EU soil and produce it there.
Because it'd be cheaper.
It'd be cheaper.
It's just mathematics.
Yeah.
It isn't.
It's the economy. It's the economies of scale.
WTO taxation gets put on everything that we sell, which is, as we keep discussing, it's between 0% for beer. Yay, thanks WTO. But it's 160% for frozen beef carcasses. So, and services, which are 80% of our GDP.
It can be anything because there's no
upper limit.
Yeah.
I mean, there is practically an upper limit, because no country's going to charge everybody the same amount for a 10,000% markup. But it is conceivable that we will have a mass cull of lamb in this country, and people are like, well, why can't we just eat it? I'm like, we haven't got the space.
Yeah, we haven't got the processing facilities, we haven't got the refrigeration facilities, we haven't got the storage facilities, and these farms have been set up specifically to cater to an export market.
Yeah, and that awful Aaron Banks, who wished death on a child this week.
No, last week.
He was on saying that on Twitter, saying that we stormed the beaches of Normandy, we can do no deal. Now, this is the problem with the human mind. Big numbers freak us out. We can't get our heads around them. We find it really difficult to go from, storming a beach with a few thousand people. We can envisage that.
Yeah.
But getting food to 66 million people,
65 million or whatever, yeah,
and making that all work efficiently, and then suddenly throwing a big brick into that and going, no, we're gonna have hold-ups on the border, we're gonna have different tariffs for different foodstuffs, and depending on what country it's grown in, it'll have a different tariff, and we've got to work out what that tariff is, and we've got to make sure that we know where everything's from and whether it meets with British standards, which are going to be different from European standards.
Why do these people always refer to the Second World War? I mean, my grandfather was killed in the Second World War.
Does it make them feel good?
Yeah, but I mean...
Because they feel like they won it?
War isn't a good thing. I mean, Marc Francois, I think he has fought and died in every war Britain's been involved with since the Boer War, I think. And, they wang on about it. And, my grandfather was killed in North Africa fighting the Nazis. I pay my respects every year. In fact, next year I'm going to hopefully go over to Tunisia, where he's commemorated, and he's got no known grave, but he's commemorated in Mejez El Bab, Commonwealth War Grave Commission Cemetery, and I pay my respects to the price that a lot of people paid, and a lot of people paid the ultimate price, but we've moved on since then. We're not at war with these people. We're in a trading bloc and an economic community.
Yeah.
But people like Aaron Banks, did you see that guy who put on Twitter, we didn't need experts during the war, we needed bulldog spirit and guns and stuff. And
Tell that to Bletchley Park.
Yeah, I mean, look who's on the new £50 note.
Alan Turing.
Not that we'll ever see one.
It wasn't a soldier. Not to diminish what the soldiers did, because obviously that was absolutely critically important.
Of course it is. You know,
it was a group effort, and people who think that the war was won just by Britain alone with some soldiers miss it again. And it's a problem of scale. We have got monkey brains that can only deal with so many bananas. And once you start going into the millions, once you start going into the billions, and heaven forfend, once you start going into the trillions, and I'll say again, £1 trillion worth of assets have left the UK because of Brexit.
So
the GDP of the world is 64 trillion. Okay, of the planet. 1 in 1/64th. That's unstandable, isn't it?
Yeah,
1/64th.
Yeah,
so
1/64.
imagine 1/64th of the GDP of the planet leaves the UK. Oh no, it's left. It's gone. It's out of here. It's
elsewhere.
It's gone to other countries in the EU.
Yeah.
And I like the EU, but I don't like it that much.
No, I would rather.
There you go. It's £1 trillion.
We want money sort of here, don't we? I mean, we don't. Money should be. I mean, spread the wealth, of course, but I mean, we need that money here. We need people working.
Well, that's something that the EU did very well, was spreading the wealth, and places like Newcastle and Liverpool and Manchester got a lot more money out of the EU than they did out of the Westminster government.
Yeah.
But also, people go, "Oh, the EU costs us this," and it's this backward. We've been brainwashed. First of all, to think that the EU is our enemy, and everything that bad that's happened in our lives is because of the EU. Oh no, I've got some fluff in my belly button. Brussels.
Can I blame someone for Heineken Zero?
It's the EU's fault. Look, it's blue.
Yeah.
And the other thing is this idea that we pay into the EU and we don't get anything back. We get access to a market that's worth over $18 trillion.
And we don't get anything
on
back.
A doorstep.
I remember being...
free access, free trade.
Yeah.
It's a free trade club, but you've got to pay your membership fees. And once you do, the trade is free.
Free. And
no taxes.
But you say we don't get anything. I mean, I look at things around Sheffield, and I mean...
Yeah, that's on top.
And you get this on top. And I was driving through Wales last year, and I remember thinking there was this whole new road being built from sort of near Port Talbot, and someone will correct me here, but I was working at the Port Talbot Works, and I went up through central Wales one day, and there was all these new roadworks, and this new road was getting built, and fantastic bridges, and it was an EU-funded road, and the roads around the Port Talbot Works they've all got signs saying EU, funded by the EU, and these people voted against that. So they voted to say, well, you've done all these nice things and built these nice new roads for us, so we haven't got the traffic problems, but
they've been lied to for the last 30 years
by the Daily Mail and the Daily Torygraph. And
they've done a fantastic job of brainwashing people into thinking that the EU, which we're part of, is the enemy.
Yeah.
Which is a bit daft. It's like going, I'm not happy about this in my life. It's Britain's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we are Britain.
Yeah.
You can blame the British government if you like, but to blame the European Union for everything that's bad is... when we remember, when we're one of the 3 senior partners and we steer the EU in a way that we want it to go.
I'm not quite
Enlargement was us.
Yeah.
We were pushing for enlargement. We were pushing for more countries to join. People moaning about immigration from Romania and from Bulgaria. There were limits, and we can send people back. Tony Blair decided, in his infinite wisdom, not to apply those limits. Not even for the sake of a news story that would have kept some of the Eurosceptics, as they were known now. Back now they're just known as headbangers, because they're beyond the pale. But look at what George W. Bush, oh my God, them were the days.
I know. I remember listening to I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue or Dead Ringers, and they used to take the mickey out of George W. Bush, and he was a bit thick.
An idiot.
He was a bit thick. But
his daddy was the president. So.
Yeah, but I mean, now we've got Donald Trump. I mean,
who has this week, like we were saying, he has offered to, he's demanded that he wants to buy Greenland.
He's like the creepy
from
guy
the
at the
Danish.
party, isn't he, that fella? I mean,
We know he sexually assaults women. He bragged about it.
well, yeah, but I mean, he's
He's a non-CPedo kind of weirdo.
We've just been offered drinks, another Heineken, a Heineken Zero, and another. Thank you.
Are you gonna have another Heineken?
I'm having a Heineken Zero.
You are
because I've got
brave, man.
I've got a car.
Okay.
Look, I'll take the bitter pill that EU dispenser has given me.
The question I want to ask is, when did we stop taking our children's futures seriously? When did that stop being a thing that we actually cared about?
Well, but the thing is, some people believe mistakenly that they're doing this for the betterment of their children. They honestly believe.
What, we're burning the rainforest?
Well, no, I'm talking about Brexit, leaving the EU.
We're making the air filthy to breathe. We're putting plastic in the oceans. Ready for you, kiddo. Ready for you.
I used to work for a plastic company, so I'm not going
to... dumping in the sea division of the plastic company.
No, I wasn't. But I mean, but the thing is that we've got a situation. Here we are. So, and that's one regular Heineken as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to say again, this is excellent service
Old Tom's.
at Old Tom's Gin Bar in Durham.
On oh God, I can't speak. Framwell Gate Bridge. Oh my God, this is strong stuff.
This, however, is not. It's just lousy stuff.
But yeah, when was the point that it stopped being important to people?
I don't know. I think
and
some
it was
people,
like me.
But that's the whole thing, isn't it? I mean, it's the very reason why I've had to drive up here today was because I couldn't. Well, I could have afforded the train, but it was vastly more expensive than coming in the car, you know. Yeah. And I think, and I remember I was going to go to London for a weekend with a friend of mine, and we looked at train tickets, and we went for a quarter of the price in my car rather than get the train. And I'd much rather use the train, let the train take the strain. You've not got to worry about the traffic. Well, we might have been on a diesel electric train.
Thank you.
All on a tab for us. Thanks very much. What's your name? Lauren. Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, Lauren.
Gets a special mention in this video. You'll not cut that out, I hope. But you know, and it's all about how much money they can fleece out of us. Whereas when you go to other European countries...
That's the people in charge. I'm just talking about the people down on the ground. It seems now that society, because you can't say people who want Brexit and people who don't want Brexit, because it's not applicable in other countries. But what is applicable in every country in the world right now is there are people who care
and there are people who
don't.
Like the guy who phoned into LBC. I think his name was Brian. I really hope you see these. And I think the guy who's replaced James O'Brien this week is Majid Nawaz, I think his name is, and he he was so aghast at what this man said. They
were talking about slavery, weren't they?
No, earlier this week he was talking about a poor Vietnamese woman who was trafficked here. Trafficked
against her will.
Via Finland.
Yeah.
She was raped en route. She fell pregnant. And this happened a couple of years ago. She was 8 weeks pregnant or whatever, and she arrived in the UK and she was getting grilled by the Home Office immigration, and she was having a miscarriage, and a medical professional said she needs to be in hospital. Now, they turned around and said, forget you, right? She's going in detention. So she miscarried in detention, right? When did we become a people where you're an unelected bureaucrat who's working on passport control? You think that's acceptable? That you actually have a human being who quite clearly needs medical attention,
being trafficked,
and a doctor.
This is not an economic migrant. This is someone who is being trafficked.
And a doctor says to you, she needs to be in hospital.
Even if it was an economic migrant, it makes no difference, does it?
But then, yeah, exactly.
And a doctor says,
and you say, Forget what the doctor says. I'm the bureaucrat. She's going in the clink. And you think, and that was shocking enough, but they admitted that they were wrong and gave her £50,000 in compensation, and she's got her asylum here. But what shocked me more was this headbanger, and I wouldn't even give him the dignity of calling him a human, said, I've been in this country all my life, I've paid taxes for 40 years of my life, why should she get something that I've paid for? And I think, people like this
what has gone wrong?
People like this must have existed before.
Yeah.
But the problem is, and we use social media and everyone's using it, but it's given them a voice that's put this spread out there. I mean, in the olden days, if you wanted to put out anti-immigration propaganda like the National Front used to when we were young, it was, it cost a lot of money.
Well, you had to print out leaflets, you had to stand there in the street, handing them out. And also, you would have people coming up to you and saying, what the hell are you doing? In actual real life, and you would have to look them in the eye and explain that you're a massive racist, or, you just don't like people if they're born with a vagina, or,
or a different colour, or a different religion.
In the wrong coordinate of longitude and latitude, which is very important to me.
At least I'll say that for them. At least they'd got some guts to do it. But I mean, this guy
now you can just sort of say something horrible and type something away on social media,
and
put the phone down and run away, and there your message has got out into the world. And it was interesting this week. There was a media event, one of the big TV media events. And there was a talk that was supposed to be happening about platforming, which is giving people a platform just because they have controversial views and the damage that's doing to society. And the BBC was supposed to be talking about this, and the person who was going to talk for the BBC got no platform.
Right.
About this discussion about not giving people a platform to just come on, because there's this thing, and it's an old line, but as a journalist, if someone tells you it's raining and someone tells you it's not raining, you have to open the window and see if it's...
Put your hand out of the window.
Yeah, see if it's raining, okay? That's your job as a journalist. You don't put both of them on the news and say, let's have a debate about this.
But Channel 4 have said this week as well that they're now going to start calling out... politicians when they're lying.
Yeah.
They've said that this week.
Yeah.
I mean, why this hasn't been happening...
This is what I want. Adam, you just told a lie. I'm going to stop this interview until you apologise for just telling a lie.
What did I say?
No, you didn't, but I'm just saying that's what should happen.
Yeah.
And if they go, it's the truth from my point of view, like the bloody Obi-Wan Kenobi, famous liar in history,
Obi-Wan Kenobi was a liar.
He told Luke that his father was killed by Darth Vader, and it turns out that his father is Darth Vader. Sorry, 40-year-old spoilers for Adam here, who probably hasn't seen it.
I have seen Star Wars, but I don't remember it that well.
All right, okay. Well, basically, he said the guy who killed your father was this guy, and actually the guy he said it was actually his dad.
Yeah, okay.
That's a massive lie. That's not from... No, you've got to look at it from a certain point of view. No, that's just straight up a lie.
So we've just likened the lies of the Brexit campaign to Obi-Wan Kenobi and Star Wars.
Yeah, filthy liars. A lie is a lie.
A lie is a lie.
And as they say in Chernobyl, which is such a great line, every lie that is told incurs a debt to the truth, and one day that debt must be paid.
Yes.
And this is what we're seeing now. We're seeing the Chernobylization of British society, the Balkanization of British society as we break apart into our constituent parts.
Because what's really scary now is the rhetoric. I mean, people like myself and Graham and people in Parliament who oppose no deal and actually want to remain within the EU, we've now been called things like...
saboteurs?
Collaborators. Collaborators is what we're called.
Like the people who helped the Nazis who had the head shaved.
Women who slept with Nazis had the head shaved, and the men folk were sort of shot. And so they're now being called...
shot.
Yeah, well, they might not have just been shot, they might have been bayoneted or whatever, but they weren't very popular, and... fair enough.
Imagine saying that to a Jewish person.
You're a collaborator.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine
a Jewish woman?
And that is our... That's how a nation's leadership is saying this.
Yeah, that's our government is saying this.
And last... a couple of years ago, the Daily Heil, and I've never forgiven my parents for buying the Daily Mail, and the Mail on Sunday, but they had a photograph of Theresa May looking evil, which is just about every photo she's in. But it said "Crush the Saboteurs" as the headline.
With the EU.
It was something to do with invoking Article 50, wasn't it? Because it was Gina Miller's court case. It was all about that. And then they put photographs of all the judges in that High Court thing on
enemies of the people.
Enemies of the people. And this is a rhetoric.
If you don't know which way this is going,
it doesn't have to shift far from what we're doing now to what happened in 1930s Germany.
No.
It doesn't have to shift far.
No.
And you've got people who phoned up today, again, Majid Nawaz, I think his name was, he was talking about slavery, and someone said live on national radio, yeah, but what about the good things that came out of slavery?
Wow. So this is the thing, though. I mean, but I genuinely believe people who don't care about the future of their children, which is the future of the planet and the future of the country and everything else, I don't think they really care about themselves either. I think that they just we get to a point where I'm happy to die so long as I get my chance of being,
having a few quid in the bank, or
no, not even that. They're prepared to be broke. They're prepared to lose their jobs, because it used to be other people. It was like people were asked, "Are you prepared for somebody else to lose, someone in your family to lose their job as a result of Brexit?" And 60% of Tory party voters said yes.
Yes, and they're prepared to see the breakup of the union as well.
Yeah, and they're prepared to see the breakup of the union. But I think they need to go one step further. Would you be prepared to literally die because of lack of medicine, or because of the lack of money to pay for you to stay alive?
I know, it's staggering, isn't it, really? And I think there would be.
Yes, I think they would.
Yeah,
because it's got to it's honestly got to the Kool-Aid part of the Jonestown cult, in which 1,000 people were killed, and most of them committed suicide, but a lot of them were murdered because they were forced to drink the poison Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Because they've been whipped up into this hysteria, this religious hysteria, to believe this absolute nonsense that if they died, then the world will be a better place, or I don't know, they'll get to. Same with suicide bombers.
Yeah.
They don't do that because they think that it's a good thing to kill themselves. They do it because they think they're going to a special part of heaven.
Yeah.
They get to the VIP lounge of heaven.
Yeah.
And they take all the people that they kill with them. So they're actually doing the people they murder a favour. That's how twisted the mentality of a suicide bomber is.
Yeah.
And this is what we've got with Brexit. This is what we've got with Trump. This is what we've got with the supporters of Bolsonaro in Brazil.
Yeah.
The rainforests are on fire. They're deforesting at a rate never seen before.
Yeah.
And nobody can stop them. These are the lungs of the world.
Yeah, 20% of the world's oxygen comes from the Brazilian, or from the Amazon, doesn't it?
But yeah, it's all very well us sitting here and going, "Oh, this is all terrible," and what the fuck? But what can we do? What can the people watching this do apart from rage about it in the YouTube comments?
We do have some good YouTube comments, don't we? Well, I bumped into my politician the other day, my local politician in the supermarket, and I raised the question about something that was important to me, and I told him what's happened and blah blah blah. And so the first thing you can do is start putting pressure on our elected officials. Write to them, talk to them, go to their surgeries. Don't be so blasé about all of this. I mean, there was something. What was the turnout for the Brexit referendum? 72%.
Yeah, that's pretty high.
That's one of the it's the highest ever. Normally, 30 to 40 people, 30 to 40% of the
30, 40 people.
Well, I think
turn
in some
up
of
for
the
a referendum.
Yeah, some of the.
But we don't have that many referendums.
No, but if people got as passionate about these other issues as what they did about Brexit, they'd be more engaged with politicians, and they'd be putting the pressure on them.
That's true. I mean, I think a big idea here, with especially with Extinction Rebellion, for instance, is trying to just capture the public imagination.
Yeah.
And get them going, "Oh shit, the world's on fire. We should do something about that."
Yeah, I think that's
for our children.
Yeah.
But then we've got this huge pushback from the elites, from the metropolitan elites, who say, no, it's nothing to worry about, it's Project Fear, blah, blah, blah. How come Here's a question for you. How come the economy matters massively when it comes to environmental issues, and we can't, push for energy self-sufficiency because that wouldn't be good for the economy, because we need to keep buying gas from Qatar and oil from Saudi Arabia? I don't understand the economics of that, but whatever. Why can't we do anything about tackling climate change without getting accused of trying to destroy the economy in the process? But Brexit is something that will destroy the economy, and that's okay.
Pass.
Okay. It's a bit of cognitive dissonance, isn't it?
It is, really. I mean, but I've stopped trying to understand things. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I can't understand why people are willing to cause this act of economic vandalism upon ourselves.
It's not just vandalism, man. It's suicide. It's economic suicide. It's making Britain the least competitive advanced economy in the world, because everyone who buys our stuff from November the 1st will have to pay tax on it.
Yeah.
Tax that goes to their government, not ours.
Yeah. So it doesn't go into our NHS or anything, does it?
No. So you will have widget from the UK and a widget from France. They're exactly the same specification. The widget from Britain will cost the person buying it 20% more.
Or 10%, or whatever the tariff is on that.
Yeah, it cost it more.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the same thing on the shelf, the exact same product, and this is the big problem. There's hardly anything that Britain makes that's unique.
Well, that's it, exactly. The only sort of things that are unique are things that are protected by, when they say, if it's from a certain area, it's got to be, if it's called something, it's got to
geographical, what's it called? Yeah, I know what you mean.
So cheddar cheese has to come from cheddar. And champagne has to come from
Cornish
champagne.
pasties have to come. But really, if we don't have any deals, then someone in America can start making Cornish pasties.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful day here in Durham. And we've got a nice view of the castle up there, and all these people are going around their business, and they're going about their business as if everything's fine. And for the vast majority of us, it is, day to day at the moment. But come the 1st of November, you're 3 meals away from a food riot.
Yeah.
Potentially. And people think that's okay.
What's going to happen, though? Because I don't think Britain's got the temperament to just fall into absolute rip your throat out anarchy, kind of the purge. I just don't think we've got the temperament for it. I think it'd be a very polite sort of withering away and dying, as people go, I don't want to be an inconvenience.
I don't want to be an inconvenience.
Could I possibly borrow a can of baked beans, because literally my children are starving?
And be like, no, because I've not got a can of baked beans myself. This is another thing that always amuses me when you hear of these people who they have these ideas, and they say, well, we can grow our own food, or we can grow our own things. And it's like, in the middle of winter in the UK, you're not going to get any tomatoes, What
are you going to grow? Enough for one meal.
And people put all this...
What about the people that live in flats? What people don't have gardens?
And people write this stuff as though, we can grow our own food, or we can grow everything we need, and we can
we did it in the war?
We didn't...
Hang on.
We didn't grow... We can't grow our own bloody... paracetamol.
We didn't grow all our own food in the war.
No,
right?
No,
because my grandfather was in the Navy, and they had to escort the ships coming from
the
America.
Convoys. So he was on the convoys.
Yeah. To stop, because that was where the food was coming in. I mean, it helped that people grew their own veg,
they had dig for victory.
You can grow food in your back garden for a year, and you'll have enough to feed a family for a couple of days.
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember my dad used to grow a lot of vegetables in his garden, and we used to get bumper crops, and all that kind of stuff, and get really good crops, and it'd last quite a while for a family of 4. But
just eating the one thing.
No, I mean, we had different things, but of course,
exactly. If you just had tomatoes to eat,
Mum had to then go to the supermarket and buy meat and buy paracetamol and buy, whatever.
Can't grow medicine. That should be our logo. That should be our catchphrase. Sorry, it should be.
People say this.
You can't grow medicine.
We can grow all our own stuff. Well, what about all the medicine? And stuff. And this is how people. They're just not aware of the facts on this.
So when was it that people just stopped giving a fuck? When was it? Was I away? Did I miss it?
It was the 12th of September 1989, I think.
Wow,
I've
that's
just
very,
made, I
very,
could have,
very precise.
I could have well made that up.
I think I said the 12th of September 2001, after the September the 11th, and everyone decided they didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
But I don't even think that's the case. I mean, it's kind of bizarre that we have come to this impasse, and a lot of it is based on resentment. It's resentment of people who are doing better than other people, resentment of people living in the cities and people living in rural areas, resentment of people living in rural areas and people are living in the cities.
And people are honestly, they're doing these, they see what's happening in their local area, factories closing, and it gives people the EU has been a convenient target for the headbangers, hasn't it? And it started, and that's the thing.
Well, for the tabloid press.
Well, yeah, headbangers in the tabloid press, like Paul Dacre, multi-millionaire, right?
They're all multi-millionaires.
But the thing is, right, it started with the small and ridiculous stories like Bendy Bananas, didn't it?
That was Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson. But it's a small but ridiculous story. And it doesn't matter that it's not true. It's small and ridiculous, so it's kind of funny, and you think, oh, Bendy Bananas. If that's all these EU bureaucrats have got to worry about, blah, blah, blah. A, it wasn't true, and B, it's ridiculous, isn't it? It's just ridiculous.
Well, I did a video where I read out like 80 different headlines from the last few years, or last 30 years, that were just not true about the EU. That would just go out there
unchallenged,
into the popular imagination, and it's like, no, that never happened. There was stuff about the EU wanting to ban playgrounds. The EU wanted to make women recycle their sex toys. It was like, and it was just like, this is obviously garbage, but they got away with it because one of the problems with the EU as an international body, it's in a very difficult situation where it doesn't want to tread on the toes of any of the 28 nations that comprise the EU.
Yeah.
So it has to be very careful when it comes to actually stepping out the line and going, hang on, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
And they have to do it very politely in a way that's not going to offend the natives. Oh my God, we've become the Papua New Guinean Highlanders of Europe, haven't we? Everyone's like, oh no, you got to be really nice to them because they're still living in a bit of the past. They're still living in the Stone Age, and oh my God, that's who we've become.
What we've regressed to that.
We have, and this obsession with living in the bloody past, which wasn't better. And I've got idiots on both sides telling me, from Labour and from the Tories, telling me that the 70s were great.
Oh yeah, the 3-day week, rubbish piling up in the streets.
We had full employment. No, we didn't.
No, we didn't.
Oh, you could get a mortgage on your £20 house. I'm like, well, not if you're a woman.
Well, no, you couldn't. No, that's true. And things weren't better. I mean, I remember, my mum when she did the laundry, she used to have to go walking down the garden with a damp cloth on the washing line to get all the scum off the washing line from the rain and all the scum that had come from the coal mines and the steelworks around the place because it wasn't clean.
Yep.
So
filthy air.
How
about we have a campaign
better
for children to be able to breathe pure air without all this impurity in it?
I've actually got a can of pure air. And I bought
Did you pay for that?
Yeah, you can get it as a souvenir in Japan. I went to Japan and I got, it's Mount Fuji, isn't it? Mount Fuji Pure Air. Got a can of it.
And you bought it?
It's a novelty gift, isn't it? It was only a couple of quid or something. But
that was worth a couple of quid.
People are actually exporting air, aren't they? From the UK to China.
Yeah, but purifying the air and purifying the ocean and the rivers and the lakes and everything, the environment around us, just seems like a no-brainer to me. It seemed like, of course, don't we want that? No, we want as much plastic in the ocean as possible.
We want as much diesel, soot air.
We want particles that will give our children asthma. We want, the particles from the airplanes. You go to Hounslow and see how many kids have got asthma in Hounslow underneath the flight path of Heathrow.
Heathrow, yeah.
The asthma rates just go through the roof. But then again, we're dealing with a generation, the older generation. No offence, mate, but who thought nothing of smoking in a room with a baby or small children, or in a car with small children. And there's actually Conservative MPs who, just a few years ago, when in one of Dickhead Cameron's more lucid moments, he decided to ban smoking in cars with children. Some Conservative MPs, I think it was that Chope knobhead, the one who had the problem with
Christopher Chope.
He's the one who complained about the upskirting bill. He's also complaining about the FMG, female genital mutilation bill,
FGM,
as well.
FGM.
He said no. It's people's freedom. It's people's right to force their children to breathe toxic smoke that we know causes cancer.
I know. It's just staggering, isn't it?
Wow.
I remember. Here's a thing for you. My grandfather used to smoke a pipe, and I remember going to the local tobacconist with my brother and my mother, and a family trip to buy my grandfather a new pipe for Christmas, like a proper Sherlock Holmes sort of style pipe. Could you imagine doing that with your kids now? Oh, come on, I'll take you to. I'll buy it, because you've got to be over 16 to buy a pipe, even when I was young. But could you imagine doing that now? I'll take you to the tobacconist to buy your grandfather a pipe. But we've moved on since then, and then this Chope fella who just doesn't live in the real world at all, hates women, and and he just wants to take us back to and what about the sugar tax as well? They're on about the sugar tax. Oh, let's get rid of the sugar tax. No,
sugar-free drinks should cost less than sugary drinks.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
that's just the way it should be. And I'm sorry it didn't taste quite as good. But we're not just talking about individuals here. We're talking about society, and this is what I went off on the other podcast. We live in a society, and if we're going to have a society in which we all contribute towards a national health service, it has to be a health service, i.e. not just fixing people who have a problem, but also encouraging people to be healthy so they don't get the problems in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
And exercise and a decent diet has to come into that. So what's the problem?
Exactly.
I would actually like to see encouragement for, from the government, for people to eat more fruit and veg. Special offers where on a certain day the government will subsidise for fruit and veg to be cheaper on that particular day, or whatever, to encourage people to go out and buy more of it, especially people from low income families, where usually having a healthy diet isn't an option, because the cheap stuff is the bad stuff.
Yeah, because it's
loads of
salt, sugar,
loads of preservatives. It lasts forever. It doesn't have a shelf life, not like fresh fruit and veg. And so, along with having a taxation, a small taxation, which is, God, does anyone really notice? I mean, the pound's lost 27% of its value.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. People come up with these facts about the pound, and you're saying the pound is worth a lot less today than what it was at the time of the referendum.
Yeah.
And you say, this is happening. And I've been saying this since the referendum, and people who I knew from school, come up with these ridiculous figures saying it's not that bad. It is. This is why with facts.
Green King, who own 2,700 pubs in the United Kingdom, it's a British company that's been running since 1799. One of the biggest landowners in the country, because it owns all the properties that are its pubs. It's been bought by a firm from Hong Kong.
For the richest man in Hong Kong, isn't
27% discount, because our pound is worth that much less against the Hong Kong dollar.
Against foreign currencies.
Yeah.
So
thanks, Brexit.
Yeah, so on that note...
Yes. So
we've been going on about stuff for an hour in a what-the meaning, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you're going to pose some interesting comments on the YouTube link. I'm sure we're going to get some interesting comments. I think one of them is going to be fat bloke talking about getting healthy, and you were talking about healthy stuff while drinking beer. But but a year ago when I started doing this with you, Graham, I never thought it'd get this ridiculous, and we haven't answered anything.
And we're not even at the bottom of the well yet. We're still falling.
It's, yeah.
Oh, I'm fine. Yeah, it doesn't hurt till you hit the ground.
Yeah.
Anyway, so cheers. What the fuck?
Euphoria.
Here's the EU.
Here's to the EU.
Cheers.
Cheers.